don't know if you've been paying attention to any of the news recently, but Sony had recently announced the PlayStation 5 Pro. And I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely hate this thing. And for a few reasons, honestly. But before we jump into that, isn't it crazy to think about how we've already been in this generation for going on 5 years? These consoles originally came out, the Xbox Series X, S, and the PS5 originally came out late 2020. It's now 2024, 4 to 5 years ago, depending on how you look at it, away from when these consoles first came out. It's been a while, and it's kind of hard to believe that this generation is almost halfway over. We're at the point where we would be getting those mid-generation refreshes. But I don't know about you guys, but I almost feel like this generation is just getting started, and it doesn't need a mid-generation refresh. I don't keep in deep touch with every single game release that's happening, but I don't feel like there's been a huge amount of, worthwhile exclusives to the newest generation. I can mostly only think of PlayStation exclusives, like Demon's Souls and Astro Bot, that were truly good PlayStation exclusives, but other PlayStation titles kept getting cross-generation updates. Even God of War came to both PlayStation 4 and PS5. And to release the PS5 Pro in a year that Sony themselves have admitted they aren't releasing any exclusives this year, it feels kind of bad in a way. There's just no good showcase of like, oh, this is why you need a PS5 Pro. The only reason why I could realistically think you might want a PS5 Pro is more stable 4K performance. But I don't know about you, I play mostly on a gaming monitor at 1440p, so I don't necessarily need 4K. And according to Steam's hardware survey, 1080p high refresh rate displays are what's most popular for gamers at least. And I get it, it's a home console, it's not getting plugged into gaming monitors or anything like that. But because this generation supports higher refresh rates, I feel like it would make a lot more sense for these consoles to be plugged into gaming monitors opposed to TVs. Because most people don't have TVs that support high refresh rate, because TVs don't get updated nearly as often as gaming monitors or even normal monitors do. And it hasn't been until recently that I've seen cheaper and more affordable TVs supporting higher refresh rates. So I truly believe most people who own a PS5 aren't utilizing it to its highest capabilities in the first place. And the increase to ray tracing performance, I still personally don't really care about ray tracing. It's cool and interesting technology, and there's showcases of it that look phenomenal. But frankly, the cheaty sort of, developer hacks to sort of simulate what ray tracing looks like still looks just fine to me. To me, ray tracing only really matters in those games that are going for ultra realism. But I don't really play a lot of those, because most of the time they're kind of boring if I'm being honest. And the overall increase in compute units, the graphics processing units found inside the PS5, has been an argument made I've seen where developers were asking for it. But I also have a hard time believing that. Wrapping that all together for a starting price of $700, it's a little ridiculous. Main argument consoles had was how much of a value it was. It was a cheap and easy way to get into gaming, and it was very cost-effective and user-friendly. But at $700, it's not exactly a good value. You can buy and build a gaming PC at that price point. From what we've seen, it's truly shooting for better 4K 60 performance. And at $700, buying a mixture of new and used parts, that is more than achievable. Assuming you're smart with your budget, you can buy a 3080, granted, last generation, but it should still be more powerful than a current generation console, including the future PS5 Pro. $700 is just unrealistic for a gaming console. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And you can tell that this is mostly a GPU upgrade. It uses the same Zen 2 AMD CPU found in the original PS5. It has the same memory, and it has the same SSD. No other upgrades were found other than on the graphics side of things. Simply put, I just genuinely think that PS5 Pro is a terrible value, and it defeats the whole purpose of what a gaming console is supposed to be. Alongside all the GPU upgrades and all of the aesthetic changes to the PS5 Pro, it also includes something called Sony's new AI-powered PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, also known as PSSR. Very similar to NVIDIA's DLSS, it uses AI and it basically trains this new model on PlayStation games and how to better render them at lower resolutions and upscale it, make it look better, runs the game better. Basically exactly what DLSS does. And thanks to the fact that the PlayStation has only one hardware type, it's going to be pretty easy to adapt your games and utilize the PSSR, which admittedly is very cool. I wish this was coming to the normal PlayStation 5 though, because honestly, I'm not entirely sure whatever special sauce the PS5 has is necessarily powering this at all. Because both of the PS5 and the PS5 Pro both use RDNA graphics, the same generation of RDNA graphics rather. So I genuinely don't understand what specifically about the PS5 Pro precludes the original PS5 from using PSSR. Once again, repeating myself at this point, I don't think a 45% more powerful GPU is what's going to really tip the scales for a lot of people. If you didn't already own a PS5, I genuinely don't think the PS5 Pro is going to be all that compelling. For me personally, I would have loved to see some sort of PlayStation competitor to the Xbox Series S. The Series S is truly an amazing value and a pretty hard thing to beat in the PC space. At $300, you get to play all the same games that the Xbox Series X does at 1080p high refresh rate and 1440p quality settings. And honestly, that's amazing. And with Xbox's larger library of high refresh rate games, frankly, that's a killer deal for a lot of gamers. Pair that with a Game Pass subscription, it could be a fairly affordable, cheap Call of Duty box. Though I do understand people don't necessarily care about the budget side of things, they mostly care about the glitz and the glam of the high-end new stuff, hence PS5 Pro. So overall, I just don't think it's a good value, honestly. And I can't think of any way Sony could have done it. And I think the reason why, though, it's $700 is very interesting. My theory is that Sony is charging $700 because the whole gaming industry is sort of in a lull right now. Sales are slowing down. Sony doesn't really want to sell their consoles at a loss right now. They even increased the price on the original PlayStation 5. So I think what they're doing is instead of selling the PS5 Pro at a loss, like they usually do and expect to make up on game sales, because they have no killer app to make up the difference this year, I think they're selling the PS5 Pro at $700 as a way to make some money instead of at a loss and hopefully making back on the game sales. Because as Sony themselves admitted, they aren't releasing any major first-party titles this year. And the PS5 Pro gets its $700 price point, which is insane. I would love to hear what you guys think about this though. Do you also hate what the PS5 Pro is? Did you wish for something better, cheaper? I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, all the other social media coverage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.